And now the way this show works is we always bring somebody from out of town. We brought somebody from far away, a whole nother life, a whole nother place, a whole different lifestyle. I learned more about this woman in the last day and a half than, I just didn't know these things. And it's like, this reminded me of my past and my present all combined. Susanna Holstein lives in West Virginia, originally from Northern Virginia. She lives in West Virginia now. And all I know is I've heard this woman tell ghost stories that just riveted me and made me not want to go home. You know, made me not want to walk down the street. She has researched all of the stuff in her area. She is being bandied about as, a national, something very important in West Virginia, the West Virginia Historical Society. She has information. And so with this, I give you our New York treasure tonight, our Brooklyn treasure, Susanna Holstein.
Wow, what an introduction. Well, yeah, I think my mother must have known the little man in the cabbage really well. Because I'm one of 13. I'm the fourth in a family of 13. And our family was Irish, English, German Catholic. As I told Tom last night, all my sisters are married. I'm Susanna Mary Veronica, Judith Caroline Mary, Mary Ann Charlotte, Teresa Mary June, Margaret Mary, Elizabeth Cecilia Mary, Catherine Mary, and Julie Ann Mary. My brothers are just Bill, Tom, Joe, Stephen, and John. I know, and you wouldn't have, you would think, oh yeah, West Virginia, of course, large family. But I was raised in Northern Virginia, in Manassas, not far out of Washington, D.C. We lived in a big, old, four-square Victorian house. My mom and dad met during World War II in England. Daddy's from New Orleans, Mom was from a little village called Caldecott, not far out of Cambridge, England. They met during the war, married, and one of the big reasons I wanted to come to New York, besides coming to tell a story here, was to see that lady in the harbor that I know my mother went by on her way to Ellis Island. So, yeah, it was a real treat to see that. So, that's the kind of background I came from. Now, with a big family like that, that we didn't have a lot of what you would call outside entertainment opportunities. We didn't have a television set, we didn't go to movies, and we certainly didn't go to plays or any other live theater or anything like that. We entertained ourselves, and we had plenty of entertainment with all of us. Mom and Dad told us stories. They didn't tell folk tales. They would tell us stories about growing up. Now, Daddy did tell us Brer Rabbit stories, and he could do with the dialect because when he was a child in New Orleans, they had a housekeeper, and her name was Mahalia. And Mahalia would tell him those Brer Rabbit stories. So he told us those. And he also told us a story Mahalia told him about a woman who died, and they put her in the coffin and were having the funeral when they heard a knocking inside the coffin. And then they put it down and opened it up, and she sat up. She wasn't quite dead. A few weeks later, she died again. And they had another funeral, and they had her in the coffin, and they're walking through the street with the coffin to the graveyard, and knocking came on the casket again. She wasn't dead yet. About 2 months later, she died again. And this time, they nailed the lid on her. And the knocking came, but they didn't stop all the way to the graveyard. That's the kind of story Daddy would tell us. Mom would told us about after they got married. This is during, the Battle of Britain and the Blitz and the bombs dropping, and they had to find a place to live. And so they found this third-floor walk-up in a little village in England called Royston. And they found out why that particular apartment was available, because it was almost impossible to find a place to rent because so many things were bombed out. But they found this third-floor walk-up. And one night they're laying in bed and they hear someone coming up the steps. This is the middle of the night. And it went on past their door up into the attic. And the next night they heard the steps again. And so they went to the landlady and said, "Who is it that's staying up in the attic?" She said, "Nobody. Nobody's in the attic." And they said, No, we hear him every night going up the steps. No one lives in the attic. So the next night they waited. Dad by the door, Mom by the light switch. And they heard the footsteps coming up the steps. They heard them cross the landing and come up the next flight, cross the landing and come up the next flight. When they got to their landing, Daddy jerks the door open, Mom flipped up the light, and there's nothing there. And the footsteps continued up into the attic. Mom said there was someone in that apartment that she would see the rocking chair moving. Sometimes the glimpse of something moving just passed her eye. And one day she said a knife flew by her face and stuck in the window jamb, just barely missing her. When she walked over to pull it out of the wood, there was nothing there. It just disappeared in front of her eyes. And she blamed that apartment on her first miscarriage on that apartment, because besides having 13 live children, she also lost 3. Yeah, so those are the stories that we grew up with, those kinds of stories. And then living in that old Victorian house, like this house, very similar in the age, the time it was built. Well, they had plaster walls, and behind that plaster is lath boards, and those lath boards have little gaps in between. And the old plasterers, they would mix their plaster with hair, horse hair, but they also got human hair from barbershops. This is mixed into that plaster to help it bind together on the wall. 13 children in the house, the plaster got chipped, and the hairs would stick out. And we could see those hairs right along the cracks, and we'd get flashlights. You're looking in the walls for the dead bodies. But we never saw any. The only dead body we actually did find in that house was when we tried to see if turtles would hibernate in the basement. They don't. No, they didn't. Made us feel very badly. But one of my jobs, being the oldest daughter, anybody else here an oldest daughter? Okay, you know how this goes. You're responsible for a whole lot of stuff. One of my jobs was to make sure everybody below me went to sleep at night. And bedtime was 8 o'clock, and it didn't matter how old you were. You're going to bed at 8 o'clock. Didn't matter if the sun was shining in the sky. You're going to bed at 8 o'clock. And my job was to get everybody to sleep. Well, you can imagine, all those children, all the girls were in one room. The boys are all in another. So I had the girls. Tom had the boys. So I had to get the girls to sleep. And they wouldn't go to sleep. But our house had these closets, about that deep. But they went way back in the walls, and there was no light in them. So one night, they're all jumping up and down in their beds and carrying on. And I sat up in my bed. I said, he's going to get you. Like, who? Mr. Skinnyhead. Yeah, who's he? He lives in that closet over there. He's long and tall. He wears a tall hat. He has a long nose with green snot dripping out of it. He has long green teeth with mold all over him and long curly fingernails. And you know what he eats? Little children who don't go to sleep. Well, by then they're like, oh, he's going to come out of the closet and get us. Like, you better go to sleep. Oh, he's going to come out of the closet and get us. It's okay, what you do, you can fool him. Close your eyes. Breathe deep. He'll think you're sleeping. Now, don't you all do it because you'll all be asleep. But that's what they were like. And they'd be asleep. And I would be sitting up in my bed, gripping the blankets, looking at the closet, waiting for Mr. Skinnyhead to come out of that closet. I'd scare myself to death. So you could say from an early age I was kind of interested in ghost stories. But I had never seen a ghost. Now, in that house, the steps creaked all the time, particularly at night. And when I was a teenager, I got to move into another room. My brothers had grown up, moved out, so the girls, the 3 older girls, got that bedroom. And my bed faced the head of those steps. And I would lay there in bed at night, hearing those creaking steps, creaking and coming up to the landing and creaking. And I'd stare and stare, waiting for whoever it was coming up those steps. But I never saw them. And I would lay awake sometimes 2 hours or 3 hours waiting to see this whatever come up the steps. And I didn't really say anything to the rest of the family about it, but I could tell you who it was. I knew it was a Civil War soldier, and his hair was dark, and it was parted in the middle. He had a mustache and a beard and a big gash in his cheek. And I believe he had a blue uniform, and it had like a belt thing going across and some medals. I knew that, although I had never seen him. But that's what I knew in my head. But I never really talked about it to the family, because it's just a story, right? Just an imagination, a dream. And then some years ago, right after Mom and Dad passed away, I was talking to my youngest sister, Julie, and she said, yeah, those steps creaking all the time. She said, my bed was up there, and I used to wait for him to come up the steps. I'm like, me too. She said, yeah, was it the soldier? It was the soldier. I said, yeah, and he had this hair, dark hair part of the middle. She said, yeah, and a mustache and a beard and a gash in his face. And my sister Maggie's like, you all saw the soldier? Well, I never saw the soldier, but it kept in my mind. I never saw that soldier. And I don't know if it's power of suggestion, because out in our yard we would often dig up half bullets or, cannonballs or buttons off of uniforms, because we were on the edge of the Bull Run battlefield there. So maybe it was power of suggestion that made all three of us see the soldier. The house was built in 1904. It wasn't even there during the war. And then I moved to West Virginia. Boy, is that the motherlode of ghost stories. Although it seems to me you have quite a few here in New York City. I've been hearing quite a few right here. But they are everywhere. Everybody seems to have a ghost story, or two, or three, or four. And they, you hear them everywhere you go. Little children tell them to you, their parents, their grandparents. People tell you these ghost stories. I swear every ridge and holler in the state has a ghost. Y'all know what a holler is, right? Okay, narrow valley, a very narrow valley, very, very small. At the head of the holler is like where a spring is, and that starts cutting into the hill. And as it goes down, it gets a little wider and a little wider as you get down to the bottom ground, and then it's a creek. And so, yeah, and I live at the head of the holler on the side of the ridge. That's where I live. So, but everybody seems to have a story, and I wondered when I moved there. I'm like, wow, why are there so many ghosts here? And I started thinking about, it's the mist, those hollers, those deep hollers, the air cools at the bottom, and the mist comes up and spreads, and it is ghostly looking. And then there's the heritage of the area. Most people are Scots, Irish, English, a lot of German. And all those places have strong cultures of ghost stories. And some of those actually transferred. You hear like the Kelpie in Ireland, in West Virginia, it's the water horse. So, or the headless dog of Tug Fork in my county, there's plenty of Irish stories about headless animals. So a lot of those stories they just brought with them and transferred them to their new place. Some of it I think is religion. Most religions believe in the soul, and the soul leaves the body. Maybe it gets stuck here for a while for some reason or other. So possibly it's a religious base. Those are cautionary tales, of course. Don't go down Tug Fork late at night, the headless dog will chase you, things like that. And partly I think it's because people in West Virginia are so in tune with their place, where they live. And I hear it here. The people here in New York you're really in tune with your place. You have that strong sense of place. And that's the way it is in the mountains. They're also very in tune with nature. They know the habits of the animals. They know where the deer are going to walk, where they water. They know the birds. They know when it's going to rain. They're just in tune with where they live and their surroundings. In some ways, I think a little maybe like the Native Americans, who were so in tune with their surroundings, and they had spirits in every single thing, every rock and tree. I think it's a little bit of that. I call it mindfulness. When you're just aware of your surroundings, that hyper-awareness. So I think possibly that's another reason there's so many stories. And I remember when I moved up there, my neighbor, Emmy, she took me on a walk, and we went down the holler in front of my house down to this abandoned holler called Bucket Run. There used to be a road went up through there, and there were houses down there. Well, Emmy took me down there, first going by her old family graveyard, which was about a mile back in the woods behind my house. There's only one stone. It's for two little girls, one named Birdie and the other was named Emily. And they're on this one stone. And then there's rocks on where other graves were. It's way back up there in the woods. And she told me about the graves and her grandmother's grave. And we went on down the Bucket Run. And she said, now see that cabin over there, that old log cabin? There was a little girl people used to see in there. A little girl in a white nightdress. And she'd just come up at the foot of their beds and stand there and stare. And people would move in and out of that cabin. Nobody wanted to live there very long. And then we go further along, and she said, now right there, you see those stones? Well, those are the foundation stones for the old schoolhouse that used to be there. And one time some men were up there, they were coon hunting. Now, they weren't using that schoolhouse anymore for it being abandoned, but they were coon hunting up there. And their dog went up under that cabin and pulled out a wrapped up bundle. And when they unwrapped that bundle, well, it was a little dead baby. She said, them coon hunters, they never did find out who that baby belonged to, but you go up here at night and they say you could hear that baby crying. And we went on down further to Trace Fork, and she said, now, here in Trace Fork, there was a girl murdered on this road. She got drowned in the Trace Fork, and nobody knows exactly how she got drowned in there. She'd been out with her boyfriend, and she went in the house, and the next thing they know, she's missing, and they found her in the creek. Now, some people thought it was her mother killed her. Didn't want her seeing that boy. Others thought it was that boy. For, he was kind of courting 2 or 3 girls, and maybe he didn't want to marry that one. I don't know, but we never did find out who murdered that girl. But they'll see her floating here along the creek sometimes. She's full of those kinds of stories, Wow. And so sometimes I'd go down Bucket Run at night, and I'd sit there by that cabin, or go down where the schoolhouse used to be, and I never did see a ghost or hear anything, besides just terrifying myself sitting down there in the dark. And those bobcats, and they scream, and that's pretty scary. But so I didn't see any ghosts. And then I started getting into storytelling, and I started hearing stories, more stories from people, more stories. And they were telling me, oh yeah, the old house over here, and the last public hanging in West Virginia, and it happened right here in Ripley, and they had the scaffold down there where the football field is, that's where he was hung at. And they buried him out there, and that house that the murders was in, why the floor in there kept bleeding for years after that murder. They couldn't make it stop, and then it burned down. And people say they hear things out there. And all these kinds of stories, they just keep rolling into, And then I started learning ballads, and all those good old murder ballads, like, where is pretty Polly, yonder she comes. Where is pretty Polly, yonder she comes. Cold diamonds on her fingers and on her lily white hands. Or people said that Johnny was a bad man, and he had a name for being mean. Or she went upstairs to make her bed. All those old ballads, and there's all these great stories in them, and ghosts in them. I still haven't seen ghosts. And I'm telling ghost stories everywhere. And a story comes to me one night, we're traveling back. I wanted to go to Petroleum. We had been at Volcano. In Volcano, they were having Volcano Days. And Volcano Days are when these men, they drag in all their old steam equipment, and they've got all these old tools, and there's all these old guys telling you all this stuff, and I'm realizing that these old guys are my age. Kind of one of those little light bulbs that goes off. Well, I looked at the map, and I saw that if we just took this little road here, we could get over to Petroleum. And I wanted to go there, because at one time, Petroleum was a boom town. Right there in the middle of nowhere, this town of 5,000 people sprung up. It was the very first oil and gas boom in West Virginia. And they had just built the Stanton to Parkersburg Turnpike. So you could actually get from the Atlantic Ocean along the James River to Stanton, take this turnpike over to the Ohio River. And once you hit the Ohio River, you could get on a steamboat, and you could go to Texas, you could go to Iowa. You could really get pretty far west. Some of the people traveling on that new turnpike were the people going to the gold rush in California. And so they built a big hotel there in Petroleum, and they called it the California House Hotel, because all these people stayed there. The postmaster came up from Virginia, from down in Albemarle County, and came up, and he was the postmaster, brought his daughter Alma with him. Well, I knew all this, and I thought, I'm going to go there, and it's getting dark. It'd be a good time to go there, because now Petroleum is pretty much a ghost town. So we started up the road to Petroleum. Well, the map showed just one little squiggly line, but the road forked, and you couldn't tell which fork was the right one to go on. And so we'd take one, and it would be wrong. And then we'd go a little further, we'd take another fork, and that would be wrong. And then another. By then, I'm thinking about those movies they made about West Virginia called Wrong Turn. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're pretty horrible. And yeah, so we get back to the road, and we finally go down this one road. We forded the creek twice, and we're in my little Buick SUV. It's not like an off-road vehicle. And my husband said, this isn't it. We just got to give up. So we come back out, and we see one more road. It's kind of going up this rocky cliff thing. And I said, well, let's go up there. My husband said, no, we're not going up there. It's getting late. We're not going up those rocks. I'm like, oh, man, we're close. Look, I'm sure we're close. About that time, a truck comes along. I said, what y'all doing? I said, well, we're trying to get to Petroleum. He said, oh, yeah, you just go up over those rocks. The road gets a lot better after you go over them, and it's not too far. He said, but why are you going that way? It'd be a lot easier if you just went around the hard road, which is what you call paved road. Go around the hard road. I'm like, yeah, well, we'll go ahead this way. So we climb over those rocks, and the road did get flatter, But the grass was about that high. And there's 2 ruts, and they're big, deep holes, and the car's going through the holes. And it's dropping sheer off to one side, and a cliff on the other side. And it's, just this little narrow road and no cell service, of course. And he said, we're lost. We're lost. I'm like, no, we'll just keep going. So we keep going, and then we see another car coming around a steep curve. Here comes a Jeep, old beat-up, raggedy Jeep. And my husband's like, oh, shit. We're back here in the middle of nowhere, and here comes an old Jeep, and it's midnight. I'm like, it'll be all right. Well, we get off the road there and roll the window down, and the Jeep stops, and they roll the window down. And he's like, oh, shit. And it's a girl, young woman. She said, what are y'all doing back here in that nice car? Like, we're trying to get to petroleum. She said, why in the world do you want to go to petroleum? There ain't nothing in petroleum. I said, well, I just want to see it. I'm a storyteller. I like to go to places where things happen. Well, the guy sitting beside her, he reaches her and looks around and says, y'all Calhouners? Like, no, Calhouners are people from Calhoun County, which is way back in there. I said, no, we're not Calhouners. So we just want to go to petroleum. He says, you want to tell stories? Do you tell ghost stories? I'm like, yeah, I do. He says, then you know about Eaton's Tunnel back there. I'm like, no, I don't know about Eaton's Tunnel. He said, well, you just passed it back there. Yeah, Eaton's Tunnel, when they was building the railroad, they was building this tunnel, and it caved in, and it trapped 3 men inside, and they couldn't get them out, so they sealed it up, and they built them a new tunnel right beside it, left them men in there. People hear them in there screaming, and hear equipment running and trains running. So you just passed it right back down the road. Well, we went on. My husband wouldn't go back. We went on, found petroleum. There was nothing there to see. We went on home, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm on the computer trying to find Eaton's Tunnel. I couldn't find it. Next day, I'm back on the computer. I finally found it. It's Tunnel 21 on the B&O line from Parkersburg to Grafton. And when they were building that tunnel, about 1869, it did collapse. And it trapped a young man inside named Thomas Nashville Johnson. Thomas Nashville Johnson was married to Alma, the daughter of the postmaster at the California House Hotel. They had 4 children. And I found out that Alma went on to marry again to a Civil War veteran who was evidently not a very good guy because he had deserted and he'd been in jail for stealing. And she divorced him in 1875, but she had remarried in 1873. Which I thought was putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Well, she married again, and she went on to have 15 children. Wow. I know, and I'm like, wow, and I realized I'm on the wrong story. I'm going down this trail, but I need to find out about the tunnel that got 3 men inside. So I went back and I started digging again. And I found it. June 6, 1963, the tunnel did collapse. And it did trap 3 men inside. Now, they got 1 man out pretty much immediately with a broken ankle. Second man took him 18 hours. And they took him to the hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and he later died of his injuries. But the third man, they couldn't get him out. They tried for 2 weeks, and they couldn't get him out. The tunnel just kept caving in and caving in. And so they sealed it up, and they built a new tunnel. Well, I wanted to find out about that man, and I started digging. And all I have found so far is that his name was Harry, and he was from Bartlett, Ohio. And I kept thinking about Harry, and so one day I went up there, and I found Eaton's Tunnel. And I went and sat there just about dark, and I was just sitting there looking at this tunnel, and thinking, somebody's grave. There's not a stone, there's nothing here to tell you somebody's buried inside here. And I sat there and I put my hand on that tunnel, and it's almost like I could feel a heartbeat in that tunnel. You just feel that. But I didn't see any ghosts, and I didn't hear anything. So I left the flowers that I brought, and I went on home. I still hadn't seen a ghost. Then, a couple years after that, one of my sons, my second son, was killed in a car accident. And you want to feel I know where you're coming from. It rips you out. It rips your heart out. It does. You glue it back together and you put it back in, And I thought, you want some kind of sign. You want something to come to you and tell you, yeah, he's okay. It's okay. There's something happening there, and it's okay. But it didn't happen for me. I didn't get that sense at all. But my daughter-in-law did. About 6 months after he died, she called me up. And Jennifer my daughter-in-law, she's very down to earth, she's very practical, she's very mathematical, and she's a diehard Republican, so you know. Well, we don't agree politically at all, so we don't talk about it much. Well, she calls me up, and her voice is shaking. She says, you know I don't believe in ghosts, and I never did much like you telling them stories to the kids, which I knew she hadn't. And she said, well, so I was laying on the couch the other night, and I wasn't asleep, I was just laying there. And I opened my eyes, and there you, John, was standing in front of me. She said he just was standing there, he was looking at me so seriously. She said, well, I got up, and I stood in front of him, and I'm thinking, why are you looking at me like that? Have you been playing poker down to Dave Putz and you lost a lot of money or something? So then he reached out and he put his hands on both sides of my cheek and he kissed me on each cheek. And then he was gone. And so I went upstairs and I lay down in bed and I felt him spoon behind me. And he lay there for about an hour and then he was gone. So now, you know, I don't believe in such things, but I know what I felt. So it kind of gave me some peace to know that he had come back for her. But I still hadn't seen anything. And then one night I was helping one of my other sons move. He was moving just not very far from me, about a half an hour. And I'd been over helping him, get things in the house. It was late, it was August, I was coming home, it was, I don't know, midnight or after. Beautiful full moon in the sky, so it was bright outside. And I'm coming up our road around a steep curve. Now there had been a girl who was learning to drive, and she was coming around that curve with her family when a drunk driver slammed their car into the guardrail and it killed her. So right there at that guardrail, they had one of those roadside memorials with flowers and a cross and things. Well, as I'm coming around that curve, I see somebody there at that memorial, and she's bent over she has long blonde hair and a sleeveless dress. Her long white arms are kind of reaching down. And she's wearing a yellow dress with little blue flowers on it. She's bending over this memorial. And I'm thinking, you know how your mind goes really quickly. One thought follows another, follows another. I'm thinking, why is she out here at this time of night? And I thought, oh, well, she's probably fixing that memorial. It's getting kind of ratty looking. But then again, I'm thinking, well, why this time of night? And so I look in the rear view mirror, and there's nobody there. And I had that feeling of floating, like I was between times. Just an odd sensation of floating. It's really the only way I can describe it. I got home and I told my husband about it. And fortunately, I have a husband who doesn't laugh at me. So he just, he heard what I said. And he said, well, I don't know. A few weeks later, I saw my neighbor, Sarah. And where I live, pretty much everybody in a 10-mile square radius is your neighbor because there's not a lot of people out there. So anyway, Sarah lived out there by the highway. And I said, Sarah, I want to tell you about something. I said, you know that memorial out there by the end of your driveway? She said, yeah. I said, now you're going to think I'm crazy because I know you're a psychologist and you go to church and everything, but I'm going to tell you what I saw. And you can think I'm crazy. So I told her about the girl, about her bending over that memorial. And I finished and I looked at her. She said, well, you've explained something to me. Because when that happened, our daughter, she was only about 6 months old. But as soon as she was able to walk and talk and we'd be out in the yard, she'd say, Mommy, who's that girl over there? Mm-hmm. Who's that girl sitting on your Jeep? I'm like, oh. Well, about 2 months ago, I ran into Sydney is her name, the girl. And I said, hey, Sydney, and she, how are you doing? She says, hey, Mom told me that you saw that girl too. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I did. She said, well, was she like kind of really thin and she had long blonde hair and she wore a yellow dress with little blue flowers on it? I said, yeah. She said, mm-hmm. That's the girl I saw. I remember her. So did I see a ghost? Did I see my imagination? What is it you see? People all the time ask me, do you believe in ghosts? And I just tell them, there's a lot of things in this world we don't understand yet. Science hasn't explained everything to us. It took them a long time to know what AIDS was. It took them a long time to figure out cancer. There's a lot of things they don't know yet. And I think this is just one more avenue that science has yet to explore. And that's my story.
an awful lot of stuff that needs to be eaten, so please don't go home without either eating it or taking it with you. If you have not contributed toward these fabulous storytellers, my hand takes money. I take checks, I take script, I take anything from Brooklyn Artery. Definitely check out the Brooklyn Artery. And thank you all. Please stick around and tell some more ghost stories.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Tom.